from this book, I can see that between 0 and 50,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. That's given to us. So the first $50,000 worth of income is going to be taxed at 15%. I'm going to put it in 0.15. Let's do a couple things here so we understand Excel. First of all, because I'm old and my eyes are bad, I like to use commas when we're working with bigger numbers. So to do that, I just highlight the column in which is going to be full of commas, and I plug it in. There's a little comma up on your toolbar, and I click it. I like to see it like that better. You don't have to because all your eyes are young, but me, not so much. The other thing is be careful when you're working an Excel spreadsheet because it will typically, most of the time, default to what we call general formatting. What you see right up here, see that? It says general in this drop down. You have, though, lots of options, okay? So in these options, I typically like to work in general, but since we've got a percent here, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it does. I'm just going to have one column full of tax rates, which are a percent. So I'm going to put it in percentage formatting, right? And see what it does to it? All right. It calculates just the same. Doesn't really matter what format it is, but you just have to be aware. Also be aware that it will default to a certain number of decimals. If you want to change that, you can do that right here. See that? Or reduce it right here. Make sense to everyone? Okay. Enough said there. All right, so from this table, I go to my second bracket. It says from $50,001 up to $75,000, which is a total of $25,000 of income. I'm going to be taxed at 25%. Right? So my next bracket is going to be $25,000 worth of income, and it's going to be at 25%. Oops. And what I didn't do is I'm going to make all this percent formatted. And when I put in 25, see what it did? That's wrong. You do it like that. So you got to have the formatting in first, and then you can just put 25. But if you put 25 and then put it into percentage terms, it's going to actually show you 2,500% because it's moving the decimal point over 2 places. That's just what it naturally does. Right? So just understand how it works. The next tax bracket is that from $75,001 up to $100,000, I'll be taxed at 34%. So that's again $25,000 worth of income. So I'll put in 25,000, and it's going to be at a tax rate of 34%. All right. Next tax bracket says from $100,001 to $335,000, I'll be taxed at 39%. So that's the total of $235,000 of income. $235,000. And that was going to be at a high tax rate, 39%. All right. Then from $335,001 all the way up to $10 million of income, and that's taxable income, I'm going to be taxed back again at 34%. So in my case, I only have $4 million worth of taxable income. So I'm going to be working through this, and I'll do that right now. I'm going to show you on my first $50,000 worth of income, I'm going to have 50,000 times the tax rate, 15%. What I've just done there is a cell reference. Does that make sense to everybody? Rather than hitting equal and then taking 0.15 and typing it in times 50,000, and getting the number. It'll get the same number as me. I have cell referenced so that I can have an equation and then copy it down. That's the whole point of this, right? So I can see right here, $7,500. I could have done this, and this is making it so hard on me. I could say 50,000 times 0.15. I get the same number, but that I'm gonna have to do this over and over and over. So look what I can do if I have an equation set up, cell reference. Boom. So much faster, right? Does that make sense to everyone?
How did you click it again?
So what I did, let me erase this. I first make the cell references, and I'm clicking on 50,000. I'm multiplying it by 15%. That first bracket, I'm gonna have $7,500 in liability. I'm going to click on where the formula is embedded. I'm gonna grab onto the right-hand lower corner and pull it down.
So it just recognizes it for the rest of it.
Yep, and so look at where this second, my second row has dropped from B3 times C3, I've gone to B4 times C4. Yep.
How'd you do the initial equation for B3 and B4?
I went in here, hit equal. Always have to hit equal first. That sets it up to where you can multiply, divide, whatever you want to do. Then I just click on the 50,000. Then I multiply, and then I click on the 15%. Super, super easy. Does that make sense to everybody? And once I have that number, and that equation set up like that, I just copy it down. Now, this is the tax liabilities I owe in each bracket, but I have $4 million worth of taxable income I gotta deal with. And so far, I'm just gonna add this column up. I have accounted for only $335,000 worth of taxable income. I got a lot more to go. Does that make sense? But I'm in my last bracket, because my last bracket here on this table says $335,001 all the way up to 10 million will be taxed at 34%. So the taxable income here, I'm gonna hit equal, 4 million is how much I have. I'm gonna subtract everything that I've already accounted for, so I can sum up everything that I've already accounted for here, which turns out to be 335,000. Close up the parentheses. I have $3,665,000 worth of taxable income that will be taxed at 34%. Does that make sense to everyone? This is a whole lot easier than plugging into your calculator. You'd be plugging in your calculator 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different equations, and with the possibility of making a mistake on each one. That thumb finger mistake. Here, everything you can see. You can see it, and if you've made a mistake, it's so much easier to find. Right? Does that make sense to everyone? It's all right in front of you. And you don't have to make the equations over and over and over again. You do it right on the first row, and then drag it down for the rest, and you're good to go. That makes sense? So, I can just take my equation, drag it down. Anytime you see that pound sign, like what you just saw, means that the column is too narrow. And when it's too narrow, you need to widen the column so you can see all the numbers. You can just double click on that column line, and it will widen it out. All right, so you can see here, that first bracket, that first $50,000 of income I earned, I'm gonna be taxed at 15%, I'll owe $7,500 in that bracket. But I've made 4 million in taxable income, so this, I gotta keep going. The next 25,000 will be taxed at 25%, so, which is the bracket is narrower. It's only $25,000 of income as opposed to 50. It's taxed at a higher rate. We would call that progressive. More income, higher tax rate, right? So, even though it's a higher tax rate, my liability that I have to pay is actually only $6,250. It's less than my first bracket, but it's because the bracket's more narrow. It's got less money in it, all right? Then my next 25,000 is gonna be taxed at 34%. That's even a higher rate. The bracket is the same size, so the same amount of money is in it, 25,000. Higher number though. $8,500 out of that bracket, higher than even my first one, because the rate is driving it. The high rate, the 34% is what's driving that liability up to $8,500. Does that make sense to everybody? It's the same size bracket as the previous one. The rate's just a lot bigger. All right? Then the next one is I got $235,000 worth of income in it. And that bracket's gigantic compared to the ones we have been working with. All right, so this is a really wide bracket, and it's a really high rate, highest rate yet that we've seen. So far what you've seen is progressive tax rates. They're getting higher, higher, and higher. The more income you earn, the larger the percent that you're going to owe. All right, any questions about that so far? This is gonna be a big one. When I take 39% of 235,000, I get 91,650. That's by far the biggest so far. All right, any questions? Yep.
What's some of the most common mistakes?
What do most people make mistakes on?
Yeah.
Creating the brackets, the actual first column. That's where most of the time I see, if people make a mistake, that's where it's at. Everything else is pretty simplistic. It's that when I'll show you, if you don't have your book, what it looks like, just what I was saying, what it looks like is 0 to 50,000, and this is the income, the tax rate, which I'll call little t here, is 15%. Then from $50,000, $1 up to, I think it was 75,000 is taxed at 25%. And then 75,000, $1 to 100,000 is taxed at 34%. And then 100,000, $1 up to 335,000 is taxed at 39%. Getting these guys translated into that column is where people make mistakes. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
And beyond that, once you get the bracket set up, it's just multiply your tax rate by your income that you've received in each bracket, and then once you have each one of the liabilities, you'll just add up this column. You can see the biggest liability comes in that last tax bracket. This last tax bracket is gigantic in width. It's got a lot of income in it. It's the biggest one by far. The tax rate, though, goes down slightly. You see that? So your tax rate goes down slightly, but the amount of income taxed at that rate is really a lot. And so the liability on that last bracket is $1,246,100. So your total tax liability is when you come down here to the bottom and sum them up. You're gonna sum them up and your total tax liability is $31,360,000. Any questions about how to get the total tax liability? Clear as mud? All right, so average tax, you have to find what your total tax liability is. Because it's looking backward. We have already earned, that is in past tense, $4 million in taxable income. So we're looking backward. Now, we have paid $1,360,000 in tax. So to get my average tax rate, I'm gonna take my tax bill, divide it by my taxable income. So my tax bill, I'm gonna cell reference here, $1,360,000. I'm gonna divide it by $4 million. And that's gonna give me my average tax rate. Make sense to everyone? 34%. What's driving my average tax rate is the fact that 2 of those brackets are being taxed at 34%. And one of them is really big. That's what's driving this result. Does that make sense to everybody?
Like weird.
Yeah. It's a big weight.
What was the 4 million that you divided by?
That was our taxable income. That was at the very beginning of the problem. We had $4 million of taxable income.
There are more people 25% rate though, paying into taxes than would have $4 million to be taxed.
This is corporate.
No.
Yeah, so this is a corporate tax rate. Did anybody look up the individual tax rates for 2018?